Hi, welcome to another installment of Ask Augustin, my masterclass series. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Bach. I've been playing a lot of Bach over the last week and a half and thinking a lot about the music, and I find myself thinking a lot about chords in Bach. I think they're really the hardest thing about playing this music. Not only are they hard technically in many instances, but also it's hard to know exactly how you want the chords to sound, because Bach often writes things in 3-4 voices that can't be played literally how he writes them down on the page, because he can't sustain 4 notes at the same time. At some point you have to drop some of them. And I think that the way that chords are often broken in romantic and modern music, which is usually to start with 2 notes at the bottom and break them like this, often doesn't get the best result actually in Bach. I think that many chords, you often have to search for the best way to play specific chords, to show the voice leading, to show where each voice is coming from, so that the listener can be aware of the bass line, can be aware of where each voice is going. You can bring out the tension in the chords as it leads towards resolution. So there are actually a lot of different cases, and it's a question of actually imagining the best way to play these chords, and sometimes creating almost an illusion that the listener can be aware of 3 or 4 voices at the same time, even though you're of course not literally playing them all at the same time. So for example, even at the beginning of the adagio, the first chord, I like to start with the bass note on its own, to right away draw the ear towards this bass line that's going to be present in that first phrase. So it start. In the first chord, I hold the top note a little longer than the others because it's tied over and continues the line. I again play the bass note on its own, but then focus on the middle voice in this chord, because this is a suspension with a certain tension and release. And now the middle voice continues. And because the middle voice is the main voice at the end, I actually hold it slightly longer than the top. So even though it's the same chord again that I started with this time around, it's the B flat that I favor a little bit, not the upper G. So this is the solution that I kind of found for that first phrase, but there are other ways to do it as well. And throughout the piece, you find a lot of places with sometimes tricky questions. One thing that I think is very helpful sometimes when you play when you play a passage that's really supposed to sound like 2 independent voices, almost like 2 violinists playing at the same time. For example, I try not to hold notes the same length. I try not to go for them to sound like double stops. I try to imagine having one person playing a little bit shorter, the second violinist, so to speak. So in order to create a feeling of polyphony, that things don't line up completely. This is actually this is very helpful in the andante of the second sonata, with the whole piece is kind of like that. And then there's some really tricky ones. For example, in the Siciliana, actually the bass line is continuing. This happens pretty rarely in Bach, that it's the bass that continues, but in this case there's no great solution, because you can go and hope that because you really emphasize the bass and played it on its by itself, that maybe then the listener makes the connection. Or you can go but I personally have never been such a big fan of breaking chords downwards, that you can also go, but maybe that sounds even stranger. Or you can go, and I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to do, or maybe there are others I haven't thought of. So sometimes you really can. It's normal actually to get stuck for quite a while on these questions, trying to search for the best solution. I was reading a book by Anner Bielsma, the great Baroque cellist, and it was very inspiring and very interesting. And he said that the note values of the chords in Bach tell you everything about the music except how long to actually play the notes. And I think there's a lot of truth to that some of it are interpretive decisions you have to make in order to make it sound that way. The listener will kind of put two and two together and understand how the voices are continuing, even if they're not literally hearing them all sustained. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time for the next Ask Augustin.